ago, Louise Brown was the very first test tube baby. She was conceived outside of the female body in a petri dish.
That scientific feat shocked and amazed the world and opened up a whole new frontier when it came to making a baby.
But this next story takes baby making to a whole new level. Just wait until you hear this family's incredible story.
Please welcome Cecile, Matthew, and Elliot to the show.
All right.
Hello.
All right, so let's just kind of cut right to it, okay, to the headline. Take this one in, everybody. You're not going to believe this. All right, so Matthew, your mom, Cecile, sitting right next to you, right? She gave birth to your daughter, right? But that's also her granddaughter, right? I mean, who's ever heard of that before? That's
I've never
crazy.
heard of anything like this before, ever.
Is that what happened?
That's what happened.
Yeah, so I guess we wanted to build our family, and we started exploring options for what that would look like. And we knew we didn't want to adopt because we wanted to have a little more control over the process. So we started exploring IVF. And the first thing that happened was we were talking about it, and my sister offered to donate her eggs to us. So at that point, we were like, all right, so we have my sister's eggs, so we obviously can't use my sperm, so we need to use his sperm. So then we knew we had an embryo, so we needed someone to carry that embryo for us, and we were considering surrogacy and all sorts of options. And one day we were having dinner, and Seal was like, I loved being pregnant, and said, put my name in the hat if you're taking names. And we were
Oh
like,
my gosh, so I was just sitting here thinking the very thing that you just said. I hear so many women say that they loved being pregnant. You know, so for you, what was this like, this decision? You know, you've had your kids and you're a mom and you're about to be a grandma, but now you're like, I want to be pregnant.
Well, and it goes back to that. You would do anything for your kids, anything for your children.
Wow.
And when he mentioned it, I did. I loved being pregnant. I always felt great doing it. Didn't take into the factor that I am 30 years older at the time. It just kind of came out. But I was just, I was excited they wanted to start it, and that's where we went.
Right. So you jumped right in with both feet, right?
Exactly.
You went forward, and there were kind of like a bunch of tests that you had to do.
Correct, yes.
Really a little risky. Tell us about that.
Well, that was interesting because when the fertility doctor called and wanted to talk to us, I thought for sure what she was going to do is say, this was very kind of you to offer, but, you know, these are going to be some of the disadvantages. And she right away said you could be a candidate, but I had to pass about 5 medical tests in order to be a candidate for this procedure. Of course, now, from my standpoint, if anybody knew me, I've never passed 5 tests ever in my life. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to look really good because I did everything in my power to make this happen,
All right,
thinking it would never evolve, and it did.
So you passed the test, and what happens next? What's the next step?
The next step is then they start to prepare my body to go back to convincing it that I can carry a child. So I had to go take estrogen again to read, just to kind of trick my body into thinking I'm a younger woman ready to.
Wow.
That couldn't have been fun. But Elliot, now this couldn't happen without your sister. Your sister donated, right? The egg, you said. So tell us about her involvement.
so when she offered, she said, I will do anything I can to help you, but she was in the middle of building her family, and we just didn't feel great about the idea of her carrying the baby and potentially ruining her chances of continuing to grow her family. So she's my best friend, and she was like, I want to do anything I can to help. So she had to do the surgery to retrieve her eggs, and we luckily were able to create several healthy, viable embryos.
Wow. How long does this process take?
Well, the whole thing was about 2.5 years.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of waiting, and they would treat his sister just like an egg donor and her just like a gestational surrogate.
And you like a sperm donor.
Yeah, so they have to like go through procedures and stuff like that. But his sister was pregnant when she offered, so we had to wait for her to give birth to her second son. Wait 8 weeks after that, until she could do an egg retrieval, and then that's where we went.
So you guys start talking to people about this? Like, did you start telling your friends, hey, I'm thinking about doing this from
My
this on?
mom's having my baby.
Did you keep this like under wraps? I'm just saying, well, she might have a really close girlfriend.
No,
but maybe you have some close friends that you said, hey, listen, what do you think?
You know, we kept it very private, and people would ask, well, why were you so private about this? Why didn't you tell people? And it wasn't that we were ashamed or embarrassed. It was because I was involved with high-risk pregnancy and with high-risk doctors, and we just didn't want the what if. We didn't know what the story would be. So I didn't want to have to explain to them if something happened or didn't go the way we planned. I was afraid I would get that reaction of, well, what were you thinking? You're 60 years old.
You're 60. I was waiting on you to say it because I thought it would be rude if I asked.
I'm 61. I'm almost 62.
She just had a baby.
Wow. Amazing. And she bounced back. Look at her. My God.
Oh my gosh. I hate to say this. I want to see a picture of you pregnant.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because she's so tiny. She just is a tiny person. And
Oh, there's one. There you go.
that was at the very end.
Look at her.
Did people look at you weird when they saw you and saw that you were pregnant? I mean, come
You
on.
know, well, I covered it really well, and so my close friends would say, if anybody saw you, they would just think, wow, she let herself go this way.
So here's a question. Do you consider, oh my gosh, this is such a weird question. Not weird, but weird to me as I'm about to say it. Do you feel more connected as a grandma or a mom?
You know, it was, and I was asked that a lot. They said, would you be able to hand over this child to them? And it was never, the whole time, whenever we would go do ultrasounds or anything, I never looked at this child as mine. It was more of what I'm giving to my son and his husband. That was the gift. And as far as a bond with a grandmother and a grandchild, it's universal. I don't
Sure.
care where it comes from. It's
Yeah.
always instant, just like anything else.
Oh
But
my
it was
gosh.
more gratifying. I mean, to be able to hand that child over to these guys was something that I will always cherish. I mean, I was so blessed that I got to participate
Oh my
in
gosh.
that.
So
journey.
I just have, I really have one more question. I'm so sorry. See, I told you.
Okay.
You're going to have to come to my house and sit on my couch and I'll put my pajamas on with some
Okay.
wine. I'm going to ask you 100 questions.
Get the dirty details.
Just one more question.
Sure.
Your husband isn't here.
No.
What did what'd your dad say about this?
my dad's was great.
He loved
He's
us.
super supportive. He's always been vehemently protective, and he's cared so much about me and Elliot, and has always been supportive. And I think what was so neat is that my mom is so funny and goofy, and so we always we make jokes and play around, and she comes off as just a little bit aloof. But to see her do this miraculous, amazing thing, I think all of us were in awe of her strength and her poise, and it was incredible. I think my mom and dad, that was like the real love story, was kind of seeing them re-fall in love in a weird way. This sounds so weird,
Really?
honestly, but like I think he really respected you and really saw how powerful you are.
Yeah.
He was
Well,
terrific.
let me
I got
tell
a
you.
lot of foot massages. So
And pregnant women are very sexy and attractive. I'm sorry. Well, we're going to have much more of this fascinating story right after the break. Don't go away.
Next, find out what it was like to carry a baby at 60 years old.
Then about the 5th month, I was diagnosed with the diabetes, and then the blood pressure at the very end got kind of high and scary.
And then, get ready to meet baby Uma.
Hi, Uma.
Oh, well.
Hello.
All right, well, we're back talking to 61-year-old Cecile, who made headlines by becoming a surrogate for her son's child, giving birth to her own granddaughter. Okay, so Cecile, what was your pregnancy like? Were there any complications?
You know, it's interesting because after I had the baby and everyone would say, oh, how was the delivery and everything, I'd say it was really pretty easy. But Matt would say, why aren't you being truthful? And it comes to that point when they put that child in your arms, all the other stuff you forget. But I did, the morning sickness that was good for good first trimester. It was pretty, it's just a matter of survival. I kept saying this is temporary survival. They did warn me, being I was high risk, that there was a chance of having high blood pressure, gestational diabetes, which I never thought that would be a concern because I'm pretty healthy and I have great blood pressure. But sure, lo and behold, I did have all of those symptoms. Within about the 5th month, I was diagnosed with the diabetes. So that was monitored by diet, so we can control that.
Great.
And then the blood pressure at the very end got kind of high and scary, and then that's when the doctors decided that we were going to go a little earlier than expected.
So not as simple as everybody thinks. It's quite a big
No,
deal.
there was,
gosh.
we were under the scope pretty tight during the whole pregnancy.
Oh my gosh. I hope you guys write a book.
Yeah.
We have a special guest in our audience today, Dr. Amanda Kallen of the Yale Fertility Center.
Yeah.
Dr. Kallen, tell us, Dr. Kallen, is this you know, this is such a unique, to me it's unique, but how unique is it? And are we going to be hearing more about this type of arrangement?
So it's a great question, regarding how frequently we're going to see this type of arrangement. And I think we're going to see it more and more, I think, as more couples and patients start to understand that there are options for family building out there. I certainly think it's going to be more common. My hope is that, as you sort of spoke about, the cost is pretty significant right now, and my hope is that there will be more insurance coverage that happens in the future, more advocacy for coverage so that people have options to cover something like this. But yes, I think we'll see more of it.
Wow. So we hear more and more about surrogates. What would you say is the average age of, surrogates these days?
So the typical range, and not always the case, but typically the range is somewhere between 21 and 45 or so. Average ages seem to range, but one published average age is around 32.
Right. So not an older person, like in this case.
Not typical, but not unheard of.
Yeah, but I bet more and more people will be doing it for sure.
I mean, I'm just so impressed by you. Like,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. I can't imagine. Dr. Kallen, what new innovations are on the horizon for, fertility in this area?
So there's some really cool new stuff. One of the things that we are starting to see in clinical trials, including in the United States, is something called uterine transplant. There are some women who cannot carry a pregnancy for one reason or another. And there have been several babies, I think it's up to 12 at this point in the world, and I think 3 in the United States that have actually been born in a uterus that has been transplanted into a woman who does not have a uterus, which is absolutely mind-blowing and very cool. One of the other things that people are working on is actually making new eggs for women who have either run out of eggs after chemotherapy or maybe due to age, or maybe they have a medical condition that has caused them to go into menopause early. That sort of field of work is still very, very experimental. But my hope is that on the horizon there is the potential to actually make new eggs from stem cells, essentially.
Jeez, where are we going, right? That's so
my
crazy.
gosh. All right, so you have a new baby, a new beautiful baby girl named Uma, and we want to meet her.
Yeah. Let's bring her
her
out.
out.
Bring out Uma.
Look at that smile. She's smiling. She's like, I like this.
I was spitting up and everything.
Hi.
Perfect.
Oh,
Oh, boy.
Hi, Uma.
Oh, well.
Hello.
Oh, my gosh. So, when you look at this, guys, do you just think, just any amount, it's worth it? The whole thing
She's
was
like,
worth
hey,
it, right?
doctor.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Oh, my
Right?
gosh, she's so perfect.
So
Yeah,
beautiful.
we did good, I think, right?
You did great.
You guys did great. Congratulations. Really, really wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing your story with us, guys. I really appreciate it. Oh, my God. Just take a shot of that kid. We'll be back after this. All right.
There's a whole lot more Dr. Diva coming up right after this.